Okay, so number one, the first thing you always want to do is substitute the value in to see what kind of limit it is. So first I'm going to substitute in the 2. So I want to know what the answer is. So 2 to the third plus 3 times 2 squared minus 20 over 2 to the fourth minus 3 times 2 to the third plus 8. Remember that you can also use synthetic division to find the value as well. So you get 8 minus 12, sorry, plus 12 minus 20 over, and then we get 16 minus 24 plus 8. Um, if you make a mistake, arithmetic mistake, unfortunately you're going to miss the whole point that it's going to be 0 over 0 limit, so you have to be really careful here. So you end up with getting 20 over 20, which gives you 0, and in the bottom you get 24 minus 24, which is also 0. So the fact that you get 0 when you replace a substituted value into a polynomial means that there is a factor that's going to come from that 0. So on the top, we substituted 2 and got 0 out of it, which means that x minus 2 is a factor. So you know that we're going to be rewriting this limit, and we're going to factor the two polynomials. And we know that x minus 2 will be a factor on the top, and we know that x minus 2 is going to be a factor on the bottom. Now, a couple of things you could do. So, for example, you know that the first term was x to the third, so this would have to be x squared. And then it ended, the last term is negative 20, so you know it has to be plus 10. You do have to figure out the middle term, and we'll use synthetic division for that. But it at least gets you started. So on the bottom, the first term is x to the fourth, so we know this is going to be x to the third. We're going to have one extra term on the bottom, so I'm going to leave a little bit more space. And then the last term here is plus 8, which came from negative 2 times something. So this has to be minus 4. And then we're going to keep going. So I actually need to know the exact quotient here, so I'm going to use synthetic division. So I'm going to do synthetic division on the top. We notice that we are missing the x term, so we have to make sure that we get 0, or use 0 as a placeholder. So we do synthetic division, and we expect 0 to be the answer, so we know that we did it correctly. So it's nice to check. So you have 10 here, you have x squared, so this has to be plus 5x. And then we do have to do the same thing for the bottom one, so also synthetic division. Again, we're missing some terms. We're missing the x squared term, and we're missing the x term. So we need 0 as a placeholders. And we're going to complete the synthetic division. And again, we got 0, which is nice. Again, we see that we have negative 4 and then 1 as a coefficient, so we know we're on the right track. And we get that. Okay, so now this allows you to see that there is a hole at 2. And remember we said that if there's a hole, then the limits are going to be equal. So then we can rewrite this as a limit of the x squared plus 5x plus 10 over x to the third minus x squared minus 2x minus 4. And then we're hoping that when we replace, substitute 2 in, we actually get a number. So again, I'm actually going to use synthetic here just to demonstrate. So you can get really quick answer. So 1, 2, 7, 14, 24. So this means that if I replace 2 into the top, I get 24 as my answer, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom. And I get 1, 2, 1, 2, 0, minus 4. So that I actually have a numeric answer for the limit. So 24 divided by negative 4 will give me negative 6 as my answer. And that's it. So I guess the key here is to remember that you have to use substitution to get an idea of what kind of limit it is. And if you replace substitute a value into a polynomial and you get 0 as an answer, that means you get a factor out of it, and it's going to help you keep going. Alright, so number 2 is very similar. You had to substitute in negative 3. The square root here is just really a distractor. It doesn't give you a 0, it's just there. We're not going to ignore it, but it's not going to mess us up. So first we're going to substitute in the negative 3 to get an idea what's going on here. So we get square root of 4, and then negative 27 plus 15 plus 12. We could see already that there's going to be a 1. And then we get 9 minus 30 plus 21. So we get 2 times 0, which is 0. And then in the bottom, we also get a 0. So again, this is 0 over 0, 0 limit, so we are going to rewrite it with using factoring. So if x minus 3 was give us 0, that means x plus 3 had to be one of the factors. So I'm going to just get it started. So we still have our square root. We will have x plus 3 as one of our factors. Same thing on the bottom. Now on the bottom, you actually don't even have to do synthetic. So we know x plus 3 has to be a factor. Our first term is x squared, so this has to be x. My last term is 21, so this has to be plus 7. You can quickly FOIL this, distribute this in your head and just make sure that the middle term comes out to be 10x. And then over here, I know that I will start with an x squared. I know that I will end with a plus 4, and I just have to figure out my middle term, so I'll use synthetic here. So I'm only going to do it for the third. Again, we're missing a term, the x squared term, so I'm going to have a 0 in there. And there we go. Okay, great. Again, very nice to see that our end term is matching, so the only thing here we need is minus 3x. So now we notice that we have x plus 3 and x plus 3 on the top and the bottom, so we have a hole here, which means that we can rewrite this limit without the hole, because our function is going to be the same everywhere else. And again, when we're talking about the limit, we don't really care what happens at negative 3, we only care about what happens when we approach it. So I only have my quotients left over here. And then I'm going to substitute negative 3 in again. Now, you have to keep rewriting the limit statement only after you actually getting a numeric value, then you can stop writing it, but the limit has to stay here. Now that I'm substituting the negative 3 in, I don't actually need it anymore. So I get square root of, I'm actually going to just use green here because we started substitution just to be consistent. So square root of 4, and then we get 9 plus 9 plus 4 over 4. So this gives me 2 times 22 over 4, which is 44 over 4, which gives me 11 as my answer. And then you're done. That's it.